Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and thanks for joining us for this important conversation on building the future of workforce. We have some great speakers today, but before I introduce you to each one of them, I'd like to first invite you to introduce yourself in the chat and tell us your name, where are you joining us from, what organization are you representing, and what are you hoping to learn from this session. We want to keep it very engaging, so please use the chat to share your questions. We will try to answer all of them during the conversation, and then the speakers will have the opportunity to answer any additional questions you have. And if you prefer, you can use the Q&A section, which is on the right side of the chat button. Additionally, at the end of the presentation, I will unmute all the attendees, so you can also ask your questions verbally. So this will allow us to save time and answer even more questions. My name is Bobby Dimitrova. I'm the Director of Marketing Communications at the Bobby Dodd Institute, and you will see several other individuals from our organization. And of course, let me first introduce you to Shane Kanady from SourceAmerica. Shane is the Vice President of Workforce Development. He oversees programs for talent acquisition, training, human services, grant making, and disability community engagement. His department designs and delivers resources that support over 300 nonprofits, 36,000 persons with disabilities, and more than 400 SourceAmerica team members. Internationally, Shane has published and spoken on topics including inclusive technology, employment access to justice, and disaster risk reduction. We will begin with a short introduction to the AbilityOne program, just because this is something you will be hearing a lot throughout the conversation, although we will be focusing on how to hire individuals with disabilities and providing you actual techniques on help you diversify your workforce. But we will be doing that through the example with the AbilityOne program. I want to also remind you that this conversation will be recorded and you will receive a copy of the recording immediately after the session. With that, I'd like to say good morning to Shane and introduce himself and allow him to introduce himself and tell us a little bit more about the AbilityOne program. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me join you today. And I really look forward to the conversation and hearing from those that are joining us. So I am happy to give a quick overview of the program. So the AbilityOne program, its mission, first, it's always important to start with that. Our mission is to create employment opportunities for people who are blind or have significant disabilities by leveraging federal procurement to deliver high quality products and services to government agencies. The program was established in 1938 under the Wagner-O'Day Act, and that's when it was established, primarily focusing on persons who are blind. And then it was expanded in 1971 as the Javits-Wagner-O'Day Act, which expanded it to all impacts of disability. It's administered by the U.S. AbilityOne Commission, which is an independent federal agency, and they do that through two central nonprofit agencies, the National Industries for the Blind, as well as SourceAmerica, the organization that I am fortunate to work for. So a couple of things about the program so you get a sense of what it does, right? How we operate. So the products and the services that are delivered through the program to support the federal government, that occurs through a nationwide network of over 400 AbilityOne federal contractors, all throughout the country, in communities all across in every state, including Bobby Dodd. And through the program, the federal contractors employ around 39,000 people with disabilities combined between National Industries for the Blind and SourceAmerica's networks. And that includes over 2,500 veterans and wounded warriors. In FY24, as an example, over 3,800 AbilityOne employees experienced upward mobility in their careers. So that was promotions through the work that they're doing, promotions into indirect labor positions, and also new career opportunities in their communities with private sector companies and many others. And another great stat is through SourceAmerica's network specifically, in FY24, the average wage was $18.96 an hour. So very competitive, very strong from that standpoint. The products and services that occur through the program, they are wide ranging. So from a manufacturing standpoint, think of military uniforms and equipment used by our soldiers. Think about a wide range of office supplies used by civilian agencies across the country. And then services like custodial, call centers, document management, fleet maintenance, facility support services, and food services. And those are just some examples of what happens through the program. The last thing that I'd like to share about the program is just its overall importance. What does this represent to the country, and why should you know about the program and support the program? The AbilityOne program strengthens our national security. It helps with military readiness, and it also helps with the efficient operation of civilian agencies all across the country. It offers significant opportunity for collaboration with the private sector through local business relationships, such as what Bobby Dodd has within their communities, our mentor protege program, and in response to government-wide contracting opportunities, which I'm sure we will discuss. And then also the program generates a positive return on investment for the federal government, for the country. So every dollar spent to administer the program returns $2.66 to the federal government on average. And most importantly, it provides economic opportunity for nearly 40,000 people per year, which benefits them, their families, their communities, and the entire country. So that's a bit about the AbilityOne program. Looking forward to the rest of the conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks, Shane. I hope this will be a helpful foundation as we move through the conversation. First, I would like to introduce you to our panelist, Ilon Chipao. She is our Vice President of Programs and Services at Bobby Dodd Institute. Then we have Veronica Rollock, who is the Vice President of Contracts and Compliance at Bobby Dodd Institute. And we have Joe Paolini, who is Vice President of Business Services at Bobby Dodd Institute. And with my immense pleasure, I'd like to introduce you to the moderator of this chat today, Winston Clemens, who is a renowned speaker, and he will be leading the conversation for us today. Hi, Winston.
Hey, Bobby, thank you. And thank you for that overview, Shane. I've had the immense pleasure of speaking to some of the participants on the AbilityOne program, so I know about the real life impact that it's having in people's lives and in their careers. And so I've got a bunch of questions for you all, and I want this to feel super conversational. So I'm not gonna put a straight jacket on anything. But I think I'm gonna just share some of these questions, and if any of the other panelists would like to build off of the previous answer, then that is more than welcome. So Shane, I'm gonna come back to you first because I think you said some pretty cool things about the AbilityOne program, and like I said, I've had the fortunate honor of speaking to some of the people who've been involved. But I wanted to hear from, I guess, from your perspective, an insider's perspective, what are some of the workforce development efforts across the AbilityOne network that are particularly exciting for you right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're doing a lot in some of the higher tech areas, IT and cybersecurity, call centers, those sorts of things, and those are all very exciting opportunities with a pretty huge potential in the future. But we're doing things adjacent to that as well. Right. So beyond IT, there are things that we're doing in the skilled trades. So we partnered this past year with 4 of our federal contractors and the National Coalition of Certification Centers, NC3, to launch an HVAC technical training pilot. And what this is going to do is create new career opportunities, more diversification within skilled trades positions that support the federal government directly. And it's a train the trainer model where the organizations are going to have curriculum, they're going to have ongoing training certification backing for what they're doing, and very interactive state-of-the-art equipment to use. And that's going to have residual impacts over the years to come. Some of the other things that I'm really interested in seeing how they develop from a workforce perspective is the growing recognition of emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and extended reality to not only be an area where people can engage in work from, working within the use of those things, but also how do they become enhancements to training environments? How do they become new opportunities for accommodations and job supports, which could open doors. And I view that as really the highest potential area for workforce development for us to focus on in the coming years, is what new avenues will open if we apply that technology to remove barriers.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome, and I think that resonates with me personally as a person who has a lived experience of disability and having to handle those misconceptions that maybe people with disabilities should only do less skilled type of roles. So it's good to hear that there are opportunities in tech and AI that are opening up for this community. And I just wanted to maybe flip it over to Joe for a second here, because as we're speaking about the future workforce and the future opportunities that are on the horizon, what do you see as the strongest opportunities for new commercial partnerships or bridge programs beyond AbilityOne? So thinking about, like the partnerships that BDI and SourceAmerica have, what do you see as potential future explorations between such organizations?
Yeah, thank you for that. And I completely agree with what Shane said. And especially here in Georgia, skilled trades has been such a huge need to fill a gap for our community. As many know in this call, Georgia with the Port of Savannah is a top place for manufacturers to relocate on the commercial side, and a lot of the workforce development organizations who are in the people with disability space and outside of it are really trying to tackle that. Hey, how do we create the skilled labor for these 5,000 to 10,000 jobs that are coming in the next few years? And I think leveraging our relationship with SourceAmerica and the resources that they provide down to kind of our local network provides some huge advantages for us. But as far as opportunities for commercial partnerships, I think on the program side, I'll let Alon go into this and Veronica a little bit as well, but it really is identifying the needs of the employers. I think historically the nonprofit network has kind of gotten money and then built programs and what they anticipated the employers need. But I think we're doing a much better job of going right to the employer to hear directly what are the pain points, and then how can we leverage trainings and opportunities in our network to create the workforce there. On the commercial side, again, it comes back to highlighting the return on the investment for the employers, really getting to know what their pain points are and how we can solve them with our labor force of people with disabilities who quite frankly are wanting to get to work and ready to work with positive attitudes.
Yeah, and did you want to build on that, Elon or Veronica?
No, I concur, both with Shane and Joe, and I think it's really the communication with those employer partners and an understanding of what the future is holding, and being very innovative in creating opportunities, even if that's through skilled labor development, training, internship, apprenticeship programming. I think are some of the key things that are going to help us really develop a stronger network and partnership to understand and tap into the talent that the disability community can offer.
Yeah. And Winston, I'll add to that too. I agree with everything that's been said thus far. Definitely focusing on skills-based hiring over credential-based hiring. That's an opportunity, but also just growth into the remote and hybrid support role. I think employers can start looking into those and how to expand those, because a lot of our individual have transportation barriers. So that can also help with the individual. And of course, Shane talked about technology, again, having those and also have some technology accommodation, making more role accessible to the individuals.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you all. And Elon, I like that you mentioned barriers because, and I guess you have a lot of experience about this, but in your experience or in your dealings with different partners, what concerns do employers raise most often with BDI around hiring disabled talent? And I guess how do you help them address these concerns quickly?
Wow, yeah, there are many. And I think most of the time they ask the question, what if I don't know how to support them, right?
Yeah.
And BDI provide job coaching, training, and we have a direct point of contact, because we don't just place an individual and move back. We want to be there throughout and meet the need of the employer. So we are there along the way. Another one an employer may ask, will productivity be impacted? And I know, Winston, you spoke about it. Well, part of our program is that we start with something like work evaluation, and we do any like community work adjustment training. So we know the individual and we train them on the different or the soft skill and hard skill, and we know their work habit. And we work on some of the improvement they need to make so that they can be successful in their roles. So we know kind of their work habit, their strength and their interests, how to best support them. So we do all that in the front so that when we go into the job, we're able to speak to the employer about how they learn best, how to best support them, and when the individual is wrapped around all those support, and they're mostly successful. They also ask about accommodation. What about accommodation? And as we know, most of them are low or to zero cost. So we guide them step by step on understanding all this and all the element about accommodation and how to support the individual. They may also ask, how much time will it take? So we want to make sure the employee understand who will handle the heavy lift, and an employer can integrate like any other employee, like any other employee or participant will integrate with the organization and will be there to support them. And we are ready. They will ask what if something goes wrong? We respond quickly, and with kind of on-site support, and with job coaching or make any adjustment that we need in support of the individual, but also meeting what the employer needs.
Yeah, thank you, Elon. Sometimes it makes me smile because I've been in those situations with employers when I've been applying for jobs myself, and the list of questions as to covering all the what if scenarios, it makes me smile because a lot of the time none of those scenarios ever come to fruition. But yeah, and I just want to come to you quickly there, Veronica, and maybe a little bit of a flip on that last question, because we kind of focused on maybe some of the concerns that the employers might have, but have there been any surprises or things that surprise businesses the most when they begin hiring or working with disabled talent?
That is a great question. I think some of the things that employers tend to find is that they have a very loyal and dedicated team when they hire a person with a disability. I know, accommodations sometimes seem really scary because you think you have to do a lot of things, but oftentimes they're very minimal, no cost or extremely low cost, and those costs are maybe one-time expense, but you tap into a talent pool that are able to perform consistently. They're able to actually meet expectations, exceed expectations. They bring a lot to the culture of an agency. And I think altogether, employers are really surprised by the fact that they, have this talent that comes to them that are, they're training, they tend to stay longer, they perform well, and they create, again, that culture that actually encourages and educates other team members as well. So I think altogether they get surprised by the fact that there's so many positives and positive impact that they look then and seek to hire more individuals and want to create a stronger talent pool into their business because of the things that they have truly experienced once those individuals are a part of their teams.
Yeah, thank you, Veronica. Has anyone else noticed any other positive surprises from employers working with disabled talent?
I can add to that, and I know Joe may also speak to it. As BDI, we are an employer, but also we are a provider. So we have our Elevate Academy right now, which is a 8-month internship program, paid internship. So we have individuals here that are working on product that are kind of ready for retail. So other surprise the business may see is the level of just reliability, loyalty, consistency that the individual bring, the strong ethics that Veronica was talking about, when expectation and support are clear to them, and just like small accommodation can unlock major productivity, and it can be as simple as allow me to play my music while I'm working, just, dim the light a little bit. It can be just any small accommodation that would just unlock major productivity for an individual and be successful in the role.
Yep. And I know you were going to come in there, Shay.
Well, I was just from an overarching statement, right? Especially as we're relating to the private sector in some of these cases, that from my experience, ongoing concerns around hiring people with disabilities really just stems from outdated social stigmas that have been disproven over and over and over again. There is so much information out there around the private sector, from groups like Accenture and Disability In to the government sector with the International Labor Organization and the Department of Labor. There's so much information that shows you that concerns around productivity, reliability, accommodations, those are just myths, right? People with disabilities are not superheroes, right? They're not like going to accelerate beyond everybody else in the labor market, but they're also not, from the standpoint that so many people hold on to, some kind of concern or risk or burden, right? People with disabilities are like everybody else, and they're seeking opportunity, and they can contribute. And everything that's out there, if you're really paying attention to it from a business perspective, tells you if you choose not to hire people with disabilities, you're actually undermining your own success.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but yeah, that really resonates with me. And maybe sticking with you, Shane, for a second here. Are there any lessons that you feel commercial businesses can learn from collaborations such as the one between SourceAmerica and Bobby Dodd Institute?
Absolutely. If you looked at to these relationships as a place to learn from, if you look at any of the connections that are happening in communities across the country, you see that there is no shortage of talent or capability or motivation to contribute. When you look at including persons with disabilities in your labor force, there are tremendous benefits. If you work with your community partners like Bobby Dodd, there is so much to offer there in support to your business goals. And people just really need to tap into those resources. They're right in your backyard, and often they go overlooked. And I think there is an undeniable return on investment from making those relationships, from taking that step forward and engaging with people. And you want to engage in a more diverse workforce. If you want to learn about what community resources are available to you, talk with groups like Bobby Dodd and really start to explore that. And I think that it's going to open a world of possibilities from a business perspective.
Yeah, totally agree. Did anyone want to build on that?
Yeah, and I always, especially on the commercial side, I love to invite people to see our mission in action and our work in action. And this plays with our relationships we have in some of our commercial lines of business, but also in the work that we facilitate with SourceAmerica through the AbilityOne program. And yeah, if you want to see what people with disabilities can do, the only thing you have to do is come work our warehouse floor or one of our large custodial sites, or one of our commercial call centers. And it easily dispels a lot of the myths I think that Shane was talking about. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles from, especially a hiring perspective, is folks getting out of their comfort zone a little bit and overcoming probably a lot of the negative misconceptions that they've heard about our community over the years. And the best way to do that is to get out of the office and get onto a work floor and see the mission in action.
Yeah, totally agree. And I have been to the warehouse, and everyone was super friendly and super skilled at the job that they were hired to do. And I want to come to you, Elon, for a second here, because we spoke a little bit earlier about how the future opportunities, it looks like we're heading more towards a specialization with roles such as cybersecurity and IT and AI coming up. And so with that in mind, how do you think BDI can help employers move from interest to confidence, bearing in mind that the roles that are coming will be particularly specialized going forward?
Winston, did you say Elon?
Yes, sorry. Yes.
Oh, I apologize.
Sorry, my
Um,
bad.
I was trying to listen. I think starting with the education piece, clear expectation, some example, real success story examples, and the ability to have a provider provide kind of hands-on support during onboarding. So kind of think about the no employer left alone. I think that gives them a little bit reassurance and confidence to move forward with provider like BDI that's trying to help individual get a job into the business. Kind of having that at no risk pathway when you have that work evaluation, the trial period, and the job coaching to help individual, and kind of just building tailored training so that the individual, the candidate arrive prepared for the exact role. So one of the things that we do on our program, as we start cultivating those relationships and talking to the business, we try to learn about the job itself. And then that way we can start preparing the individual what to expect and learn that ourselves so we can prepare them up for success. So that helps a lot. And then be able to demonstrate quickly the wins that matters to their business. And that gives them a little bit, whether it's attendance, quality, and task completion. So we have to be able to speak to that. And when you can observe doing the work evaluation side or a program like Elevate Academy, you have the confidence to go to advocate or talk to an employer about an individual because you've had a chance to observe them and their work habit and also help them improve in any area. So that gives confidence to the employer to kind of move forward. At least that's what I've seen as we move into the Elevate Academy and some of the other area in our work.
Yeah, no, thank you, Elon. And I really like what you said about, Bobby Dodd actually taking the time to understand the industry and the role so that they can then pass on that knowledge to whoever is coming on board to fill those roles. I think that's really cool. And Veronica, let me come to you for a second here because I know we're talking about, placing people with disabilities in different kind of workplace opportunities, but I know it's not just about that for Bobby Dodd Institute. I know we also value their overall well-being and ensuring that they feel supported throughout the entire career journey. And so, Veronica, could you speak a little bit on why it's helpful to support not just the employees, but also maybe their families or their close circle as well as they go into a career?
Oh, absolutely. So, when an individual is starting a career, and it doesn't matter if you're a person with a disability or not, it's being able to feel supported, that you have strong mentorship, and opportunities to grow within that specific role. So I think being able to provide that for the employee. And being able to support them in their growth and help them, having strong goals for them to reach, and then providing those opportunities to be successful, and families, having an opportunity to provide education and support because there are a few unique things that you should consider when you're a person with a disability in employment, and how that may impact benefits or if you're receiving Social Security. So not only educating the individual, but also the family and how they can navigate other support services. So it's really, making sure you're supporting the individual and the family through that process and providing education on like benefit navigation, understanding Social Security Administration, how working can benefit you, but also the things you need to be reporting to Social Security. So understanding that. Some of the things that we also look at is like planning financially for your future. And I think one of the things that is unique to BDI is, we do offer pooled special needs trust services. And so it's thinking that next step and that financial planning for tomorrow. We all work and kind of if everybody wants to be on that kind of work journey, but the natural progression at the end of a work journey is retirement. And so, understanding what that could look like for a person with a disability who has different unique needs as part of that, and how to engage, pulled special needs trusts or special needs trusts, how to navigate ABLE accounts, and then also just what are the other resources. Just like everyone else, things change at different phases of life. And so understanding, what's happening when you're first engaging in the workforce, then you're new, transitioning out of high school and getting that training and those certifications, and then moving to a job. But then what happens the next phase where you want, what are the growth opportunities? How can I enhance my skill set? Is that another certification or other training? Maybe that's education. And then what's, maybe as we all kind of age, what are the resources in the community that are available to support you through the work journey, but also, if some situations change. So making sure that the individual and their families really understand what those support services are that are available to them. That changes all the time because you're dealing with roles of federal and state governments, and how those impact maybe benefits or supports. But making sure that you look at that through the lens of how you support that employment, how you support that engagement with the employer, as well throughout that entire process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, I really like the end-to-end thinking, not just thinking about, getting a job, but also all the different seasons that will happen all the way up to retirement, which can feel like a long way away in the beginning, but I'm sure it comes at you pretty quick. Um, and so, Joe, I want to come to you for a second here, and maybe just to bring together this whole first part of the discussion that we're having. So what does it actually look like, Joe, when Bobby Dodd Institute supports an employer throughout the entire employment journey? Like, and I know we've had that question answered in different ways and in different parts, but what's the elevator pitch? I'm an employer. What does it look like working with BDI, and how can you support the entire employment journey?
Yeah, I mean, and it's a question I get asked often, whether it's from kind of the workforce development community or if it's directly from an employer, is, where do we start? How do we begin on this journey? And, my initial response is always, it just starts, you've already taken the first step as an employer by showing an interest in developing your workforce and including people with disabilities there. And it really involves just a conversation about, each organization and each opportunity is unique and different, and each business has kind of unique problems that they're trying to either solve or where they want to have a broader initiative for people with disabilities included in their space. So from an end, it starts with that conversation and it starts with that thought. And then it goes into a little bit more of, what support services can BDI offer? I think one of the things I'm most proud of is, our relationships with organizations on a national level like SourceAmerica and AbilityOne, but also here on the state side and locally, for an organization of our size, which we're not relatively large, we have a broad network of people that we can connect to. So if we don't have the answer, we can typically find someone with the answer for you as an organization. But on the job side and for the local impact, it really is just identifying those opportunities. For some organization, it starts with just a little bit of training, and that training, disability awareness training, can dispel a lot of those myths and get the organization over that initial fear and negative stereotypes of hiring people with disabilities. And then it moves into, what are those actual jobs that they're looking to fill? And myself and Alon and Veronica kind of partnering together to identify individuals who are in our network that we want to pair with those jobs. And then once we get people into the jobs and get people trained, it really becomes into that kind of support that Alon mentioned. I think one of the things that we do very well is when we are able to pair a person with a disability with an employer for work, we're not just dropping them off on the front door. We are with them to support their goals, their family goals and their caretaker goals, but also the goals of the employer. And that's on the placement side of it. On the business services side of it, it follows a similar path. It comes to what is the business looking to solve, and can BDI help solve that problem? And when we're able to solve that problem on the business services side by providing contracted work, the commercial enterprise has the confidence to know that we're going to staff that work with people with disabilities and provide those employment options and then that long-term support internally.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. And I think that's a good way of wrapping up that first part of the conversation before we move into more of a quick fire round. I usually say 1 or 2 sentences, but if you've got a bit more to say, then I'm not going to penalize you for that. And so the way it's going to work is I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to pick someone to start, and then they will share whatever they need to share. And then once the first person has shared, if you could please pass it on to the next panelist, and then they will speak, and then we'll create this sort of relay, passing the baton type thing going on. So Shane, I'll come to you first, and then you pass it on to whoever you wish to. And the question is, how can we encourage more businesses to confidently engage with disability talent pipelines?
Thank you, Winston. I think we need to continue to highlight the wealth of the community resources that are available, so represented in our network, represented in what Joe was just speaking to, that want to partner with the private sector, and to continue to support national policies like the Work Opportunity Tax Credit and other affirmative things that help to encourage more employment of persons with disabilities across the country. So with that, I'll turn it to Alonda.
Yeah, thank you, Shane. Just demonstrating the business value. It's not a charity. And just that business value, and Veronica talked about it, and even Shane talked about it earlier, and Joe. It's just that business value, the strategic business value, hiring people with disability. We all can go down the list of all the benefit of hiring individual as they offer that, reliability, the loyalty, and all those things, and just providing ongoing coaching to the employer, so they feel supported, not burdened. That's where things falls down, when they feel like, okay, this is a burden. It's more on me and my staff to do this. So encouraging them and knowing that we're going to be there all step of the way goes a long way. And just continue to highlight those peer employer success stories. So if today we are partnering with a company, being able to highlight those success stories to other employers. So we need to continue to build those success stories. I know Bobby always get on me with success stories. We've got to continue to build those success stories so other employer can see it and be able to kind of partner and get on that as well. And just offering an easy entry point as far as, those work trial, the short-term placement and partnership is very valuable to the employer. And I'll take it back to Joe.
Okay, Alon, you were supposed to do quick fire, and you took all the points I think we were going to make. But I think my encouragement would be to, if it's something new, to start small and to get some initial comfort and to get your feet under you a little bit as an employer, and to start small. Start with 1 or 2 jobs and then grow from there. I'll go over to Veronica. She's the last one.
Yeah. So again, there's so many great points that have been said. So I'll just add quickly that, understanding that the disability community is an untapped talent pool. And there are, so many solutions to business needs by offering employment to this population. And there are so many positive business outcomes by encouraging and supporting employment for everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Veronica, and maybe I'll come to you next, Veronica, so that you can have the first crack this time. And so I guess the question would be, what does a future-ready workforce look like for people with disabilities? So now from a person with disability perspective, what does a future-ready workforce look like?
That is a great question. I think a lot of it has to do with, being creative and innovative, and really looking at one of the things that, we've touched on several times, and Shane has even mentioned, is looking for skilled training programs, not just higher education degrees. Skilled training programs, I think, is one of the key things that we're going to be able to be very innovative and be able to mobilize people faster, and really tapping into, this population as early as possible. Is that transitioning out of high school, but not forgetting that we have individuals that are, transitioning back into the workforce. So creating opportunities with, highly skilled training programs that can lead to some of these new technology, AI-driven, cybersecurity type roles and positions. And so I think, really tapping into that training program. And so I'm just going to go in reverse and throw it back over to Joe to add in his next comment.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think for me, it comes down to making sure that folks have equitable access. We can create all the training programs and all the employment opportunities that we want, but if there's not equitable access, both from a technology standpoint, a geographic standpoint, and then training standpoint, it's going to present even more barriers for our community. I'll toss it over to Alond.
Okay. I think retention focused, kind of matching people to the right jobs. I think we all like numbers. I think it's easy to be the here and say, out of all these people, all the individual we've supported, we placed 100% individual into jobs. But if our retention is small, then there's a problem. I'd rather have a higher retention rate so that we know that people are into jobs and that actually they will stay into those roles. And Veronica spoke about the importance of family. Even on a daily, family influence routines, they influence transportation and health and long-term stability. So as we ensure consistency communication, we reduce all those preventable challenges. So it's really important to ensure everything is taken care of at the beginning. As far as job match, understanding the individual circumstances so they can be placed in a job that they can be in for a long time. I guess it's Shane. Going back.
I'll go real quick. I think for me, it's less a question of a future-ready workforce and more of a future-ready labor economy, where we all universally recognize how short-sighted it is to exclude people from participation based on assumed limitations, right? That's the future, is you're looking at people through the lens of assets, not through deficits. And you're looking for opportunity, you're looking for talent, you're looking for potential, and you're not operating from a place of risk or concern or stigma. I think the disability community is just as ready as any other community in the country to contribute to the future of work. They just need the same opportunity that anyone else is given.
Thank you, Shane. And I'm going to start with you this time, Joe. What does a successful collaboration between national and local partners look like in practice? What will be your keys for this?
Yeah, I think it comes down to what's been mentioned a couple of times, is making sure, whether it's an organization or if it's in the government sphere, is having the correct policies and access in place from a broad perspective, and then distilling that down to the needs of the local communities. Each community is different, and someone in the chat just posted about transportation, which is a big barrier. And I'm sure we'll answer that in a little bit, but if an organization as a national organization has a goal, and that goal is not getting distilled down to the local, whether it's the hiring manager or the person who's having those direct conversations locally, the collaboration kind of it stays in the theory land and doesn't get into the working practice land, right? And I'll go to Alond.
Yeah. What a successful collaboration between, I think, working on having that seamless handoff from training to placement to retention. It's really important to ensuring that it's successful. I think when it's complex, our individual typically struggle because we're adding more complexity and barrier. Veronica?
I think a lot of it goes back to I'm going to take it a different perspective, but understanding, not only the specific insights or needs of those employers, because that can vary depending on if they're metro or rural. And I think Joe kind of touched base on that before, that we really need to make sure we're supporting the employers to hire persons with disabilities, understanding the incentives that are available, being able to educate individuals on that and how that really all ties together to create, if it's tax credits, grants, or other workforce development support, even tapping into resources such as the vocational rehabilitation agencies and how they can support businesses to be successful. And that really is beyond just, the employer, but how do we as a community of employers, from, the federal side down to the local side, really understand and communicate those. One of the comments that Joe said earlier, I think was really, really important, is it has to be accessible and it has to be equitable. And I think making sure that businesses have that same accessible, equitable access to those supports. So I will throw it over to Shane, I think.
Real quick, my collaboration and partnership, you're trying to seize market opportunity. That comes from a combination of what each group is uniquely bringing to the table, right? So looking at it through that lens, what are the combination of our unique talents or unique resources? What is that going to accomplish from a market opportunity standpoint? And from a disability community standpoint, we need to get away from a zero-sum game mentality, right? There is so much opportunity out there, but so many people are pulling from the same audiences trying to catch their attention, that sometimes the easiest thing for those audiences to do is to do nothing, because it's confusing and it represents risk for them. We need to stop doing that, right? We need to all focus our attention in the same direction and work together from that standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Shay. Thank you. And I don't know, we've got a few great questions coming up in the Q&A, but just to wrap up the quick fire, and this time I am going to push for just a one sentence answer. What is one mindset shift that you think employers can make to improve disability employment outcomes? And I'll come to you, Shane.
Change our bias to look at assets and not deficits. I'll go to Alon.
Move from Kanady to how can we set them up for success? Yeah.
Shift the burden of requesting accommodations and self-disclosure from the person with the disability to the employer.
And yeah, and I think tying into what Joe just said, demystifying the expense of accommodations and what accommodations actually are, I think that would greatly help.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And thank you all for all of those insights in that prepared part of the discussion. And I believe we're going to dive into some audience Q&A. So audience, if you're still typing a question, that would be a great time to hit enter, send that through so that we can start to go through some of those. And I believe, Bobby, you can correct me, we can read out the questions from the chat, or people can also verbally speak to ask their question.
That is correct. We actually have two questions here in the chat. Joe briefly addressed one of them, and it was, how do you get around the transportation issue for these new hires with disabilities? So Shane, maybe you can take that one first, and then Ilon and Veronica.
I wish I had the answer to that question. I mean, so much of it is geographic, so much of it is infrastructure related. There really isn't a simple answer to that. We find some challenges in all the work that we do with the federal government on military installations. They're not always in the easiest to get to places from a public transportation standpoint. We tried once upon a time to collaborate with employment or a transportation provider through an app-based program, and just found a lot of ups and downs in that journey. So we've not arrived at a great answer to that. I think nationally, huge investment in that infrastructure to help level the playing field would be the best thing to do. It's just a matter of there's so many variabilities across the country when it comes to that.
Yeah, and transportation is always a tough one. Yeah, and I think there's a couple things there. If you live in a major metropolitan area like Atlanta, it is advocating for the funding and accessibility to public transportation. I think as a provider, we're always looking at ways to how we can offset the cost of an individual getting from home to work. But that's just here in Atlanta. I know in rural areas there's many different challenges where service providers are trying to provide their own transportation, and in a lot of cases, even the employers have taken the initiative to provide transportation. There's not a great answer, as Shane mentioned. It is one of the things I think as a workforce development community that constantly keeps us up at night is kind of unraveling that transportation ball.
Yeah, for individuals that are able to ride MARTA, for sure, we encourage that. And then we partnered with MARTA in the past. We actually had MARTA Mobility, somebody from there to come and talk to our family and individual and be able to speak about this program and what they have. That's for those that are able to ride MARTA. But we also had talked to family and encourage family to carpool if there is any option, but also encouraging employers to develop role if possible that can be hybrid or remote. I know that's hard, but there's just different elements, different layers of things that we can do together as a community with transportation. But it's a hard one, and and sometimes we have individuals that have roles and they get there and transportation becomes difficult. And then they lose their job because they can't make it to the work. So solving that and answering that question heads on is really important, whether it's the family to help or whether it's, carpool, whether it's working with the employer to see what's around what we can do, or to see if the individual is able to ride MARTA, what's around, there's a whole lot of elements that need to be worked out, just looking at everything.
And I just concur, unfortunately it comes to one of those situations where, there has to be the infrastructure, there has to be some investment into that, especially in our rural communities, as Shane touched on, where the jobs are in one side of town and, the housing supports that most individuals with disability needs are on the other side of town. But this is where creating, those communities, within the families, your coworkers with rideshare is often what it comes down to. If there isn't a formal transit system within the local community, and then just really talking to your community about it and making sure that you're advocating and your voice is heard on some of those limitations. Because if individuals with disabilities are feeling it, individuals without disabilities are feeling it. So everybody is having the same issue. It's a universal factor that we just really need to focus on overall.
And this next question kind of ties into this one. You talked about geographic location and other things like that. So I will combine the next two questions in one. First, in rural areas, which are not easily reachable. So how organizations can reach to people in these rural areas, and in general, how can people find more information on where to start when it comes to hiring people with disabilities? Shane?
Yeah, so there's tons of resources out there. So one place you could start is SourceAmerica.org. That's our public-facing website, and you can find information about our network. And that is an instant community resource that you can tap into, like a Bobby Dodd. But Bobby Dodd has peer organizations that are all across the country that are very excited about being engaged in their communities and helping to facilitate these opportunities. So that would be a great place to look to start out. We also have, in terms of looking at availability of jobs that are happening in our network across the country, you can look at our job board, which is also on the SourceAmerica.org website, jobboard.sourceamerica.org. You can take a look there at all of the opportunities that people with disabilities could potentially engage with throughout the country. So those are two resources that I would suggest.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think also, especially here in Georgia, the workforce development community is pretty tight knit. So again, as Shane's pointed, is going to the right spot to get a resource. But you look at vocational rehabilitation here in Georgia. You look at the other service providers. You have BDI, but also you have Goodwills, Easter Seals, and we all know each other. So if there's a need in a community that's not being met, go into any of the organizations that are there local will usually kind of get you to the right organization or group. And I agree. I think this was coming from one of the questions about companies. I do agree that most companies will be open to the job opportunities once they gain the confidence that the resources and the individuals are there.
I think Shane and Joe summed up pretty well. I think that's all. Those were my thoughts.
I concur.
Okay. We have 4 more minutes, but no more questions. So any closing remarks from each of you, maybe?
Excuse me, I have one question.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I can't type it because I'm driving. My son, he's a senior this year. He has, the short question is how we going to involve, how we going to roll with BDI. We live in Atlanta, so how we going to do, how we going to start? I think I'm the right place, I believe. So is there anything I can do to start, or do I have to register, or I don't know? So
yeah, I can send you more information, but the first step is just go to the Bobby Dodd Institute website and you will get the application form. But I will make sure I follow up with you personally after this conversation.
You're in the right place. We'll talk to you.
Really, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So one thing I think we didn't cover during the conversation was payment for people with disabilities. And Shane, the last time I checked, those employed through the AbilityOne program, they were paid $18 and up. That was the medium pay range. So many employers may be worried about how they cover the cost and what is the return on investment. So how do you ensure that the employees with disabilities are fairly paid?
Yeah, well, we operate under a federal program, so the federal government sets the wages from a services standpoint. So we follow the same practices that any other federal contractor does, Bobby Dodd and anyone else that is operating a federal contract from a service perspective. And from a manufacturing perspective, looking at equity across the region where the jobs are occurring to make sure that you're paying competitive wages commensurate with that industry. The return on investment is huge and it's well documented. There's a report on our site that people can see that we were independently reviewed by Mathematica, and it showed a 260% return on investment for every dollar spent by the federal government to administer this program. And that is undeniable in terms of the benefit. So I would stress looking at resources like that. It really helps to paint a picture that this is a great investment, a great business opportunity.
Yeah, and it's the same on the commercial side as well, is having a strong understanding of what the local fair wages are for that job or that task, and working with the individual and the business on advocating for fair wages. Typically, if a business is going into wanting to hire someone with a disability below fair wages, they're already starting behind the 8 ball. So there's a lot more education that needs to happen there.
Wonderful. Winston, would you like to share anything as a closing for that?
Yeah, no, I think because we're almost at time, I'd love to definitely hear a final golden nugget from each of our presenters that we can all take away as we think about what the future looks like for people with disabilities getting into meaningful employment.
I'm happy to kick it off real quick. I think we would be well served to stop overgeneralizing about other people, right?
Yeah.
People with disabilities are such a diverse range of individuals. They work in entry-level jobs, they're CEOs, they're elected officials, right? They're every job in between. Over 1 in 4 people have the impact of a disability, and 80% of disabilities are acquired in someone's lifetime. There is so much to understand about the talent that's represented in the disability community. I think that we really need to look at it from an asset perspective and really start to dispel some of the misconceptions that people continue to hold on to.
Thank you, Shane. I'll come to you, Veronica.
Yeah, I think, Shane really said it well, that this is a diverse talent pool, and really making sure that when you are looking to hire, that you are looking at every option you have. And that is, that's going to, as Shane said, 1 in 4 individuals are experiencing some form of disability. So going into it, knowing that you are, this is a great talent pool that's going to provide you with longevity, reliability, and productivity.
Thank you. Elon?
Yeah, just ensuring that we start looking at our practices, whether onboarding practices, our job descriptions, and everything to make sure that it's accessible. Joe spoke to that a little bit. I just had an interview last week was saying that a lot of times when he's applying for jobs, he kind of self-select himself out because there's all this list of things that he's looking at. He's like, well, I can only do like 5% of these, so I don't qualify. So just reviewing our job description and making sure that it's actually saying what the job is and making sure that it's accessible to everyone.
Thank you. And Joe?
Yeah, and I know we're up on time, so I just wanted to really just say thank you to everybody. This is actually very well attended and represented, and the engagement is phenomenal. It highlights both the need for continuing education, but also the desire for the community to want to engage in the work that we do with Bobby Dodd Institute and with SourceAmerica.
Yeah, and I'll echo that as well. Thank you to everyone who's made the time to be a part of this session today. And let's show some love to our speakers. Let's send the emojis. Let's say thank you in the chat. But we appreciate all your time, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, Vincent.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you
Appreciate
everyone
it.
for attending.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.